further ado, Mr. Rick Scott.
Sorry? Yeah. I need the glasses or not. I may not. Good day. Oh, good morning. This morning, I'd like to talk about love, but not love in general, and certainly not, kissy love, as my girls used to call it. I'd like to talk about a love that's more focused on the following passage. Can you put Matthew 22 up, please? Jesus said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. The second is like it. Love your neighbour as yourself." I'm going to focus on the second half of that. As a way of a roadmap, this morning I'm going to have a look at how everyday examples that God's shown us of his love and desires us to show our neighbours, and not just the ones that are actually our next door neighbours. We're going to look at some scriptures. I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'll probably sing a song. First, if we can just open in a brief prayer, please. Father, thank you for this time together. Thank you for this opportunity to rest from our busy lives. Thank you for the love that you continuously pour out on all of us. We live in a broken world, a world where love seems to be in short supply. Help us, Father, I pray, to show love and compassion where and when we can. Help us to be better reflections of you. Amen. And can we have John 13, please? Yeah, well done. It says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." A recurring theme. If you can put 1 Peter up for me, please. Thank you. Finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. And 1 John 3, please. Thank you. For this is the message you heard from the beginning. We should love one another. For me, I find following Jesus' examples not the easiest things to do. In respect to this particular issue, loving everybody, some people can at times make it very difficult. Can't they, Rob? I've lost my place now. Don't look at me, boy. You see, I have, like you, hopefully, a human heart, and with it, all of its human limitations. I love God. I love my wife. I do. I love my kids. I love my grandkids. I love my extended family and a few close friends. And that's when I come unstuck. You see, I love God and all these people I've mentioned with all my heart. So what's left after that? My heart's all used up. It's reached its love capacity, and yet it must be possible to find more. In effect, to enlarge my heart. Jesus commands us to love one another, and he would have not done so if it was impossible. Difficult, maybe, but not impossible. So surely as I accept and take in the abundance of love that God has for me, as I allow my heart to be God's heart, then I should have love and love to spare. But like I said, some people are really annoying. Right. I I think we'll tell a story. Do you want to just flick that slideshow on for me, please? It's not relevant, it just gives you something to look at while I'm talking. Although actually, everything on there is relevant. Right, okay. I'm going to recall a story, if I may, that hopefully shows God's love at work and demonstrates the power and the effect showing love can have. So are we all sitting comfortably? Great. I need to take you back in time. Not too far back, around the mid to late 70s. It was a time when television only had 3 channels. Power cuts were regular affairs. Playing outside was the norm, and it was a time of chopper push bikes. A time when mend and make do was the general rule, and in some respects, I think, people were probably more content. Oh, and for anybody under 30 who's listening, there was no internet. Anyway, there was this lad, and for argument's sake, I'm going to call him Basil. It's as good a name as any. He had his issues, but wasn't in essence a bad lad, although his antics did land him in a fair amount of trouble. Basil had been dragged, as many were, to church as a young boy, and he'd endured years of school on a Sunday without ever making any connection to God. And so by the age of around 9, was refusing to go anymore. As Basil approached the I know everything and I'm invincible teenage years, and due to various events from his earlier years, which I'll not mention because they're not relevant here, he developed a rather large chip on his shoulder and an attitude to match. Most of the adults that knew Basil described him as belligerent, aggressive, argumentative, destructive, and in general, not a nice boy. One day, out of the blue, one of his friends invited him to go along to a church-run youth club, which, as he soon discovered, he was happy to attend. They did mad stuff. They played mad, no-holds-barred games like British Bulldog. And one evening, whilst at this youth club, a sudden and unexpected and very severe for the Isle of Wight snowstorm occurred, which left Basil stranded and unable to get home. There were 2 boys at this youth club who came from a very large and local family. They said, "No worries, come home with us. It's not a problem, our parents won't mind, and you'll be very welcome." Basil ended up staying with this particular family for about 5 days, and those 5 days changed his life. From the moment he walked into their home as an unexpected guest, and not knowing how he'd be received, Basil felt a sense of unexplainable peace and calmness about the house, which should have actually been impossible, seeing as just how busy a household it was. He was made to feel welcome from the moment that he stepped through the door, and over the next few days, Basil was treated as one of the family, treated with the same level of respect, and, more importantly to him, there was a sense that he was loved. Throughout the whole time that he stayed with them, they never had any expectations or made any demands. They just showed total acceptance. Except for saying grace before meals, they never even mentioned God, and yet God's presence in that family was palpable. They had managed to show this obnoxious young lad that the supposedly unlovable was in fact lovable and someone worth investing in. To cut an overly long story short, soon after the stay had ended, and at this family's particular invitation, Basil started attending a small, family-friendly church, not unlike this one in many respects, and in a fairly short period of time, met with Jesus for the first time, and started to understand whose example that this family had been following. And because of the love that they had bathed in, they could show the love to the unlovable. Could I have 1 John, please? Dear friends, since God so loved us, we ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. So, how can we do better at demonstrating God's love towards our neighbours? It doesn't have to be anything grand. It doesn't have to be expensive. And it is incredible how powerful it can be to just offer a word of kindness. Ask someone how they are and genuinely care about their response. To offer a word of encouragement. To notice when someone's not been around for a while and check in on them. In fact, sometimes the simplest of actions can have the greatest effect. 2 John, please. And now, I am not writing you a new command, but one that we have had from the beginning. I ask that we love one another. God demonstrated his love for every one of us by sending his Son. Jesus demonstrated his love for everyone by ultimately giving up his human life in the most horrendous way possible. It wasn't rope, it wasn't nails, and it wasn't by any other power or means that existed that had held Jesus on that cross. It was love. Love alone. Love alone had held him there. It was love for me, love for you, and love for everyone. And now I'll sing a song. Where'd I put it? Come on, Sally, where'd I put it?